Hello everyone, I'm OP Tank bringing you another Neverwinter video. My apologies for not having any recent content, but unfortunately not much has really been going on with Neverwinter. We did get a new event. Unfortunately that was kind of lackluster and crappy. But I did get that new mount, so can't complain. Free new mount. With that being said, I have had a variety of requests to do a rotation guide for Paladin, so this is the rotation guide. I'll be broken up into different parts, starting with tank, on how to tank with mobs, then how to take a boss, and then we'll switch over to the DPS side for mobs and bosses as well. So that being said, I'll include timestamps in the description below, but hopefully this video won't be too long. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. So, tanking for mobs. Quite simply, you want to get into the fight, you want to pull aggro on all the enemies, and you want your party to absolutely destroy them as quickly and efficiently as possible. So, first things first, a couple different ways to approach this, and there's a couple different ways to do the rotations. Best thing to do is kind of take what I show you and then modify it to suit your play style, but I'll give you the basics and explain why for each step. So before you end up going into combat, one of the things is if you have your daily available. If you have your daily available, I always like to pop that before going into battle, mainly for the defense that it gives to my party from the actual daily itself. But also, stable, when I use a daily power, my teammates' defense, deflection, and movement are increased by 5% of my power for 10 seconds. So I always like to pop that before going in, give them a nice little buff just in case. So if you have your daily available, you want to pop that. Unfortunately, I don't have the action points to show you. After that one, next thing I like to do is Divine Call. Now the reason why we do Divine Call is class mechanics. So you taunt all foes within 30 area. No foes are going to be around us as we're approaching them. But main reason we do it is 10% increase in damage resistance for 10 seconds, and you reflect incoming damage back to the attackers while this is in effect, and up to 5% of your maximum hit points. The other main reason is because of Vengeful Judge. With Vengeful Judge, we are getting 35% more damage. Now I understand we are in the tanking role, but the extra damage does come into play for Templar's Wrath regenerating hit points. We'll be getting to that part very shortly. So, if you have your daily, you pop it, and you're about to run in, you want to use Divine Call, get that extra damage, a little extra damage resist, and the next thing we want to do is we're going to Radiant Strike straight into the group. Now, this is going to be a quick way to get us right into the fight, and with Radiant Strike, we're also increasing our armor pen and damage by 5% for 15 seconds. Now it does not stack, so multiple strikes of this doesn't increase it. All you're going to get is a reset on the timer for 15 seconds. So right now we just increased our damage by 40% between Divine Call and Radiant Strike, and increased our armor pen by 5 seconds. So next thing that we're going to do is up to you. You have two choices. One, you can either do Templar's Wrath and get temporary hit points right away, or you can do Binding Oath. So I'll explain both of those. So Binding Oath. For 5 seconds, nearby enemies are forced to attack you, and you gain 100% of your maximum hit points as a shield. When this effect expires, or the shield is depleted, any foes within 30 take 100% of the damage that was taken by the shield, and you take 50% of that damage. Higher ranks just increase the overall length of the shield. And then Templar's Wrath. You deal heavy damage all nearby foes, stunning them, which is very nice. Gotta love that stun. It's very good for when enemies are attempting to use some of their rather larger, more painful moves. That being said, you should note that the purple hand that the Yutani snake people in Chult shoot out of the ground, the moment the animation starts for that, no amount of stunning or dazing or anything is going to prevent that from triggering. So you want to hold up your shield or get out of the way when that happens. And since we took Oath Protection for Templar's Wrath, we're going to gain temporary hit points equal to 300% of the damage dealt. So you really have two choices after your Radiant Strike into the group. You can either pop your Binding Oath, pull in aggro right away, or you can pop Templar's Wrath, get temporary hit points. Either one will work. Templar's Wrath is going to put a quick daze on them, so by the time that's said and done, you can actually Binding Oath after without a worry. So that's usually the process I do it in, is Templar's Wrath and then Binding Oath. After that, the next thing I usually do is I usually hold up my shield and move to the other side of the enemy to get behind them. This is going to make all the enemies face me and be exactly 180 degrees away from my allies, allowing my allies to come in and absolutely destroy them. So after that, you have a choice of a couple of different powers for your last one, or if you choose to go with these ones. One I like to run with if my allies have a tendency not to get out of particularly those red areas, or they hang around with the big bosses where they hit hard and do small AoE damage. I usually run with Circle of Power. The reason I run with that is for 25% damage resistance for my allies. Also for yourself, which is quite nice. So if you're lacking a little bit in your damage resistance area, this is a nice one to run with. But it also increases your damage, which is another good thing, because that's going to help you out with your temporary hit points with your Templar's Wrath, which is great. Another one I like to run with is Burning Light. So we're not really using this one for damage-wise. We're more using it for the disorienting effect, because this is going to prevent the enemy from doing their particular big moves and stuff that they charge up. So you can hold the charge it all the way up and get multiple procs from it. Or if you're just fighting, you see they're about to do a big move and you don't have Templar's Wrath available, just give it a tap. That's all it would take to stun them, or, well, technically disorient them, and prevent them from casting their particular ability. Once that's said and done, I usually pop my artifact, and I will usually pop my Mount Power, if you have one, and if my daily's back up, I will pop that. And that's all there really is to it. So, to recap for mobs, what you want to do is, if you have your daily available, use your daily before going in. Remember to Divine Call. You're going to Radiant Strike in. Then it's your choice between Templar's Wrath and Binding Oath. Use one, then followed by using the other. Move to the other side of the enemies, and then your third encounter power is up to you, whichever one you prefer to use, and you activate it. And then whenever you have your artifact and mount power, feel free to use that. And all the time, don't forget, every 10 seconds use Divine Call, because not only is it good for a taunt, it also reduces the amount of damage you take, because it increases your damage resistance by 10%, but also you have the 35% extra damage, and also it's a great way to get your encounter powers back if you really need them, get them back in a hurry. So Divine Call every 10 seconds, and make sure you Radiant Strike every 15 seconds. Keep up the extra 5% armor pen and 5% damage to help with your temporary hit points. So that's basically tanking for mobs. Now, for tanking, for bosses, a couple of different things. So on this one, I followed pretty much the same rules as I do before. If I have my daily available when we're going up against the boss, I'll pop that just before I run at him. So I'll pop my daily. This is going to help out all my allies. Next thing I want to do is Divine Call. Want to get that extra damage resist and damage. I'm going to Radiant Strike into the group. Well, not group. Radiant Strike into the boss, sorry. I'm going to pop my Templar's Wrath, get my temporary hit points. I'm going to cast Vow on him. Vow is an outstanding power, works wonders because you are going to increase the damage you deal to it by 20%, make that 50% at top rank, and since we took Oath of Protection, allies who strike your vow build threat for the paladin. So basically, it's a great way to lock down the target to focus solely on you. The other skill that we use, since I'm already in this window, is Bane. So you're going to place a mark on your target, and each stack of the mark is going to force the target to deal 10% less damage and take 10% more damage for 10 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. If you went Devotion, you can actually put this mark on allies to increase the damage they do and the damage they and reduce the damage they take. Higher ranks increase the duration of the mark up to 16 seconds. You should be able to have this mark on them 24/7, 365, not a problem. Doesn't matter of your recovery at this point. So, after we cast Vow, I like to throw on 2 stacks of Bane, and then I'll pop my Mount, my Artifact, my last stack of Bane, get more temporary hit points if we need it, keep casting Vow, and I just wail on them. Because the other at-will I'm running with is Oath Strike. Now it's our least damaging one, but the reason I run with this one instead of Shielding Strike is Final Strike of this forces the target to attack you for 3 seconds. Very useful against bosses. Basic, easy way to lock them down. And then for the rest of the fight, just pop Templar's Wrath every now and then. Keep your temporary hit points up. Make sure you keep vowing the target whenever it comes off cooldown. Always keep 3 stacks of Bane on the boss. And whenever your daily comes up, make sure you pop it. Give your allies some defense. Pop your artifact and your, if you have a mount power, make sure you pop that. Try to put them in with each other to give maximum amount of bonuses to your allies. And just sit there and wail on them. Now, most people will move to the backside of the boss during the fight, where the tank will always stay in the front. That's slightly different from what I told you with the mobs, because, well, with the mobs you want to go to the backside, make them focus on you. But for boss fights, usually your support and your DPSs are all going to run off to the side, start popping some of their buffs and stuff to get their to maximize their damage output, and then they'll run to the backside. So usually the tank will stay in the front for the bosses, but we'll wrap around for the back for the mobs. Now you don't have to use Vow. If you know that you're going to be able to keep aggro not a problem, you can always try running Circle of Power for the 25% damage resistance. You can also, which is also going to give you some extra temporary hit points as well. It's only 30% opposed to 50 from Vow, but still doesn't hurt. Relentless Avenger is a decent one. I don't recommend using this for mobs, simply because it drives back all those other targets, which kind of sucks. Because you strike one target, everything else goes flying away. It's not what you really want. You want to kind of keep everything bunched up close to you, so that your DPSers can just run in and slaughter everything. Very important. But it does taunt targets. This is a great one to use during a Demigorgon run. For the first part there with the portals, where everyone's running around closing portals and you're stuck keeping the Demigorgon occupied. I like using this, and it's got some beautiful range on it. Like, super beautiful range. So, that's a solid power for that particular instance. Other than that, Absolution is a good one for putting shields on people that take a lot of damage. So if you got a bit of a crazy, loose DPSer that likes to run ahead of the tank, you can always throw a shield on them. Shield lasts until it's actually gone. Like, it has to take that amount of damage and break it. All it does is give you a shield for 50% of their HP, and allies under the effect of the shield gain 50% damage resistance, which is pretty solid. Helps to keep your DPSer alive. Divine Touch is alright. Unfortunately, it does almost no damage to the individual that you target, but does heavy damage to everything around it, which is nice. But not so much for tanking. Not super useful. Cleansing Touch, Banishment, we don't touch. Banishment's hilarious in PvP though, but in PvE, don't touch it. As for Smite, Sacred Weapon, Burning Light, not super useful. You can run with Sacred Weapon because since we took Oath of Protection, your next 3 single target attacks also forces the target to attack you for 3 seconds. So that is a good way of locking down. So if you didn't want to use Oath Strike and you wanted to stick with Shielding Strike, you could probably throw in Sacred Weapon to help with that. But the choice is completely up to you. As for your dailies, you got 2 different choices. These are the main ones I run with. Divine Protector, Shield of Faith. One lasts for 12 seconds and reduces their allies' incoming damage by 30%. The other one only lasts for 6 seconds, but it's 60%, and it redirects it to you, and you only take 60% of it. So, mainly I always pop that one. If I know the boss is going to do a really big move that's going to cause a lot of damage and stuff, I'll drop Divine Protector just to mitigate the damage that my allies will take. Otherwise, I'm usually just popping Shield of Faith. That 30% is really all the team needs. If you're holding aggro like you should be, you're going to lose aggro from time to time. It happens. It's not the end of the world. But you really want to concentrate on keeping aggro as much as possible. That being said, there is 2 things you should note about Tomb of the Nine Gods. First boss and second boss, the Aspect of Orcus and Wilfrig, whatever the second boss is called. You can't keep permanent aggro on them, unfortunately. It's a pain in the ass, but every few seconds they're just going to pick a random target and attack. So nothing you can do there. So usually I don't run with Vow during those 2 fights. I'll usually run with Circle of Power, especially during the second bosses with all those bloody effects that he likes to throw at us with the lightning and the water followed by the fire. I hate that guy. So I usually run with that one. So that is for bosses. Now for DPS, some slight changes. So you have a choice when it comes to auras. Most people always run with Aura of Courage. You can run with Aura of Wisdom, but now since Mod 15 dropped, Aura of Solitude has been a solid one. You're going to increase your damage by 21%, which is huge, since your companion no longer counts as an ally. Don't forget, this will not work in a group, so don't bother using this in a group. As for DPSing for rotations, you want to maximize your damage, so a couple of things we'll go through. So for mobs, you want to basically follow almost the same principle of the tanking. So we'll start off by popping our artifact. I have the wheel, so I will end up getting the fire buff. This is going to increase my damage by 30% for 30 seconds or 28 seconds. So, love it. Apparently the better artifacts to run with is the Apostles Decanter or something like that. I don't have one. The wheel's been working fine with me. I can run all content with the wheel right now, so there's no point in me changing it out at this point. Plus the stats on it, you can't go wrong for Paladin. It's got 4,000 to HP, 1,000 to power, and then you got 600 to stamina gain. You got your two most important stats on it, so I like it. So after you activate your artifact and you've taken the fire buff or whatever your artifact is, if you're running with Soul Sight or either Giant or something like that, you might want to be actually in combat before you do it. If you are running with the wheel or something to give you a buff prior to going into combat, you might want to activate it before you go into combat, just in case they knock you around a bit. But if you are like running with Eye of the Giant stuff, you want to be in the fight before you pop it. So if that is the case, then you want to hold off until after Templar's Wrath, pop your artifact, then go to town. But for me, I'm going to pop my artifact, get the fire buff. Next thing I'm going to do, Divine Call. Again, we're going to get our damage resist from this. We're going to start reflecting some damage that we take. And of course, we want that 35% more damage. So once we get our 35% more damage, we're going to Radiant Strike in as per usual. And after we Radiant Strike in for our extra 5% armor pen, 5% damage, we are going to Templar's Wrath. So now that we Templar's Wrath, this is the point where if you're not running with the wheel or you're wanting to be in combat to activate your particular artifact, you'll activate your artifact here. So after you do that, I like to activate my mount power, depending on the group I'm fighting. I usually aim for the biggest individual just to make sure that it doesn't just eat the eat the mob minion. I want it to do the roar to get that extra 10%. After that, this is where it kind of gets a little fuzzy because there's a lot of ways to start dishing out some damage for when you're running around solo. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my companion for starters so I don't keep hearing him attack. So what I usually run with is Burning Light. Main reason for that is I like to run with a lightning enchantment. Burning Light works great, lots of procs, there's lots of damage. I tend to melt enemies just ridiculously fast. So that's the main reason I like running with that. And then it's a coin toss. I'll either run with Smite or Circle of Power just for the extra damage, or Smite because it does some very nice single target damage and does a nice burn damage over time, like this. And it will just keep proccing every little bit, which is phenomenal. But back to my particular rotation, I will, after my Templar's Wrath, activate my mount, and then I will charge up my Burning Light for all my procs. And while that is proccing, I will find the biggest individual in the group, and I will smite them, and after that I will just keep wailing on him until things come off cooldown, or 99% of the time they're dead before I have to worry about it. If you're not running with lightning, Plague Fire works fine. Frost works great as well. Those two are both solid. Terror is a good debuff one. I would recommend that for tank builds more than single for solo play, but still a solid one. And Dread is a nice one, especially if you combine it with Sacred Weapon and Smite, because Sacred Weapon is going to increase the damage of Smite, and you can actually get 2 procs of it before you have to worry about it, and then smite something, and you'll just increase the damage that you do by a large margin. For if you decide to do hunts, or you decide that you want to try running yourself through on your own one of the lower end dungeons, this is a decent setup for doing tanking a boss, or not tanking a boss, but damaging a boss or a hunt. You're going to start off pretty much how you would do it with a mob. If you're running with the wheel and stuff, you want to activate it first, grab whatever buff you're getting, Divine Call, Radiant Strike in, get your temporary hit points, drop your mount, do your Circle of Power, do your Wrath. You want to have your daily ready, and then drop your daily. As your daily is going to be a hard hitter on that one, and so is your at-wills. Your at-wills are going to do a significant amount of damage. Circle of Power and Vow is going to boost your damage by 80% right there. So it's going to be quite nice. You can change it up to, you're always going to want a little something to offset the damage you're going to be taking. I know what some people do is they like to use Vow on themselves, or Absolution on themselves, because that lasts permanently. And then wait for that to come off cooldown. And then what they like to do is use Bane, Circle of Power, and Vow. So you're getting 50% from Vow, 30% from Circle of Power, and 3 stacks of Bane gives you another 30%. So you're looking at 110%, which is quite nice. Now don't forget, this shield won't recharge, so strongly recommend to be running with Shielding Strike and just hammer the crap out of them, keeping that shield up. Chances are you are going to be running with the Earth Archon, so you want to be at full health to get that extra 6.5%. 6% if that's the only Archon you're running with, plus 5%, or plus 0.5% for each additional one. But yeah, that's your basic rotation, and as you're fighting through it, just activate your daily powers as they come off as they become available, and then activate your artifact. If you have a mount power, activate that whenever they come off cooldown. And just remember to every 10 seconds activate Divine Call. Doesn't matter for tanking or DPSing. You want that extra damage and damage resist regardless. And don't forget, every 15 seconds. Radiant Strike, get that extra 5% armor pen, extra 5% damage. It's going to help out both for your tanking, because you want those little extra temporary hit points to offset the damage you're going to be taking. And of course you want the extra damage if you're DPSing, because you just want to kill everything so you can get through doing your dailies and stuff. So that being said, I'll just show you a couple of quick, neat tricks that I've learned over the years, and then we will conclude the video. So one of the first neat tricks is Burning Light. So Burning Light will do multiple procs for you. You don't even need to touch the enemy, you just need to be near them. That being said, if you don't like to activate it in the group, you can always activate it outside the group and then charge in. So you can charge it all the way up and then run it, and it will start proccing. Now you're going to lose out on a couple of procs because of the distance you have to travel, but each time it does proc on its own, it does stun, or correction, it's dazes, which is basically a stun. It prevents their actions from triggering, which is quite useful, especially in when running around by yourself doing DPSing and just doing your dailies and stuff. Very helpful. Another trick comes from Binding Oath. Now, when I was talking about tanking, and you activated your Binding Oath, and after your temporary hit points, I always told you, come around to the backside of the enemy. Something that a lot of people argue about is with Binding Oath. So they're saying that once you activate Binding Oath, let it be. let the shield break, so either take all the damage for the shield to burst, or if it doesn't burst, wait until the timer's up to burst, even if it comes off a cooldown. I beg to differ. For tanking, your job is to keep aggro, not to deal damage. I would recommend always activating Binding Oath whenever it comes off cooldown. So even if you still have your shield, activate it again. That's just my personal opinion. You are there to do a particular role as a tank. You are supposed to hold aggro so the rest of the party doesn't have to keep using scrolls to get back up. Now don't get me wrong, chances are a party member will go down. There is AoE's damage from some of the mobs and bosses, and of course, for some strange reason, people are just like super attracted to stand in red for some god-awful reason, but they do it, and they go down, and then we laugh, and then they blame the tank. We get used to it. It happens. Another simple trick. You can't see it right now because I got that bloody shield on. But Templar's Wrath, you don't actually have to use it against foes. You can do it just by yourself, or you can do it with all your party members standing around you. If they are, you'll actually get temporary hit points. There we go. And the best part is they will stay there until you enter combat and they are depleted, or until you exit combat. So they will stay there until we run in, go into combat, and then leave combat. Now they're gone. But it's one way of getting temporary hit points before a fight without having to actually have to run into the fight without any form of shield or protection. This is just to help you if you notice that you're a little lacking in your damage resistance area and you're getting one-shotted by the boss. Kind of an easy way to offset that type of damage. Other than that, I already talked about Relentless Avenger being very useful for doing a Demigorgon. It's a great way to keep aggro on them. It keeps them away from everybody. The cooldown on this is almost 11 seconds, and the taunt actually lasts for pretty much 11 seconds, so it's solid. You just need to keep hitting this off every time it comes off cooldown, and he'll just keep following you around. It's phenomenal. Absolution, again, great power, especially if you're running with a Guardian Fighter. Guardian Fighters actually need shields and stuff in order to offset to boost up their damage. It's part of their feats. So a lot of Guardian Fighters like it when the Paladin put Absolution on them. Plus, since we want protection, they will actually gain 50% damage resistance, so that shield will last a little bit extra longer on them, which is quite nice. Oh yes, Shielding Strike. I should also mention, I should get rid of those temporary hit points, but when you're, you don't even need to be fighting in order to get that shield. All you have to do is swing, and you can see the blue bar moving slightly. So you don't even need to make contact with any enemies or anything like that. You will automatically get that shield. And that pretty much concludes. I can't think of any special combination off the top of my head, but there is always a possibility I have forgot something. So if anything I have said today is incorrect, please let me know down in the comments. I hate to pass on terrible and wrong information. But also, if I forgot something, or if you saw something I haven't, please let me know in the comments below. I am always happy to learn something new, and especially try it out. Because if something really works well, I am more than happy to give it a shot. So that being said, thank you so much for being here. I hope this video has helped you out in some way. And that being said, hopefully I will catch you in my streams on Twitch. So that is the conclusion of the video. And once again, just leave a comment below if anything is wrong or if you thought of something I haven't. I wish you all the very best. Goodbye.